Hi, I'm Aaron from Fight Quality, and today I'm reviewing a pair of the Hayabusa T3 Boxing Gloves. Check it out. The T3 range is one of Hayabusa's main lines of equipment. T3 actually stands for the fact that it's the third generation of their Tokushu range. Hayabusa sent us over a pair in 16 ounces. We've already written up our review on fightquality.com, but we're going to summarise a few points for you here. Make sure to also head over to fightquality.com, where we've also reviewed the matching shin guards to go with these gloves. So initially Hayabusa released these in three colours: blue, grey and red, which is the version that we've been testing out. Since then, they've also released a white version, which is essentially an inverted colour option, green or purple. So plenty of colours to choose from. The colour doesn't just change this panel on the back of the hand, it actually changes the palm, as you can see here, the stitching, so the stitching colour will change depending on what colour version you went for, and also, I don't know how well you can see this, but it changes the inside of the glove as well, so the inner lining actually changes depending on what colour version you get. This is really cool because it's not something you see many brands doing. So Hayabusa have made these gloves out of Vylar engineered leather. Vylar is a synthetic leather that Hayabusa have created that they found performed better in their tests than real leather did. You can tell it's not real leather, but it's actually quite good quality. Here at fightquality.com, out of all the gloves we've tested, this is probably the closest that we've tried to the real thing. So the Sweat X thumb, it's a microfiber suede covered thumb, which basically you use for wiping away the sweat from your brow in a heavy training session, for example. Personally, I actually really love it because it's a lot easier than just wiping away with the corner of your t-shirt or, just sweating all over the floor. But if you use it too much, it can actually get quite soggy and it's a bit unpleasant after a while, so maybe it's better for the quicker sessions. So with previous Hayabusa gloves, people have complained that sweat's getting in and smelling out the gloves. So on these gloves, Hayabusa have tried to remedy that. So in the actual lining, there's traces of silver, which obviously has antibacterial properties, so it should stop the sweat from ruining the gloves. And then in between the padding and the lining, there's a thin plastic layer which just stops the sweat from being able to soak into the padding, just to further remedy that smell and stop it from building up. While I can't say I've noticed any terrible smells, I will just say that I have noticed that perhaps it's that plastic lining, but the gloves end up taking a lot longer than other brands to dry out, so you just have to be really careful and make sure that you're airing your gloves out as well as you can. We also have an article on fightquality.com called How to Keep Your Boxing Gloves Clean, so go check that out for some other tips. So these gloves are now packed with features. One of them is the splints on the back of the hand. So you've already mentioned the different panels that hiding splints underneath them. At the moment there are 4 splints on these gloves. In previous generations they've only had 3 splints. But basically what these do is they add a little bit of protection for the back of your hand, so if you have any incoming strikes they'll block them. But what they're really good at is that when you lock up the wrist strap nice and tightly, they just lock into place and keep your wrist really secure, so there's no accidental bending of the wrist. The stability this gives is great, however you do have to bear in mind that if you're parrying or perhaps clinching up, you don't have the wrist movement you're used to. This isn't really a problem for things like pad work or bag work, but if you are sparring it is something to bear in mind. One of the other big features about these gloves is they have dual strap, as you can see here. So basically what happens is your first strap is elasticated and you can really stretch that round hard, and the second strap pulls over the top of that and then just locks it in place. Once you've done these two both up, you get really good secure fit around the wrist. There's also an amount of natural impact protection that comes with those 2 straps. Obviously where you have that extra layer of padding, it just gives you that extra protection from any incoming kicks perhaps. So when first putting these on, you can really feel the support in the wrist almost straight away. But they've actually got a really comfortable hand compartment as well. So the hand compartment is not too loose, but it also doesn't feel like it's crushing your hand. It's a little bit of movement, tiny bit of movement, but it feels really well held in place. With these gloves I found you can make a nice natural fist, and the thumb tucks in quite nicely. However, I have found that it actually has caught once or twice when I'm boxing. I've just managed to smash my thumb on the end of something, and it hurt a little bit more than I'd expect. That's probably because there's not actually vinyl leather on that. It's just a microfiber suede, so there's not as much natural protection from that. There's not really much you can do about it, but it's just something to be aware of. I've already mentioned just how good that double wrist strap is. The problem is, when you're training, it can actually be a little bit of a pain, especially when you've already got one glove on, to try and do both straps up. It's something you get used to. I mean, it didn't take too long, but it is a bit of a pain. It takes a little bit longer than an extra glove. Admittedly, it's worth it, but it's just something to bear in mind that these aren't a speedy pair of gloves to put on. What you can do is leave the Velcro elasticated strap underneath just slightly looser than you normally would, just so you can slide your hand in and only do the one strap. Then I feel like you lose out on the extra protection that you get from the elasticated strap in the first place. The padding's a little bit firm, a little bit dense, but it's not too hard. And when you punch, you don't quite have a bounce. So there's no bounce, you actually sort of sink in a little bit more. Which is why I really like these for tie pads and heavy bags, because you can really sink those shots in hard without feeling anything in your knuckles, and it works really well. I wouldn't say you need too much of a break-in period with these gloves, because they pretty much feel the same in terms of padding as they did straight out of the box, which is pretty good because it means you can just get in there and smash up straight away. So these gloves do of course work in any training you want to use them for. You could use them for sparring, you could use them for pads. I personally think they're actually really good on the heavy bag or the tie pads when you're hitting that slightly harder surface, especially just because the wrist support really kicks in, and when you're hammering in shots you can really focus on without having to worry about whether you're going to bend your wrist wrong. If you have wrist support issues, they'd be a great pair of gloves for you, so you don't have to worry about injuring yourself again. You can just rely on the extra support from the two straps and the splints in the wrist just to really hammer in those shots without having to worry about hurting yourself. So these gloves retail at about £95 in the UK and about $100 in the US. Obviously that's not a low price, but you've got to bear in mind these aren't aimed at beginners. These are aimed at someone slightly more advanced who's looking for this extra support, stability, and these extra features that come with it. So just to recap, you've got some really good wrist support here. The padding's thick and dense so you can sink your knuckles in quite nicely, and I think the visual design is pretty stunning as well. On the flip side, it can take a while to put the gloves on, but you do need to air them out after you use them. And also the wrist can be a little bit too supportive at times, in fact, just when you're trying to clinch and parry and all those things, catch kicks perhaps. If you like this video, head to fightquality.com where you can check out all of our other written reviews and guides. If you want more video content, hit the subscribe button and we'll see you next time.